Well, I'm very happy to say I've got finally managed to pin down John Sharp, uh, author of the book Facing Down Fear, which we were very happy to publish. It's available from Ex-Monibus Media, but also now on Amazon for international readers. But welcome, John. Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome, Han. It's nice to see you.
John, I was just trying to work it out, but I think we've known each other for 45 years. And I've got to tell you something. When I first got to know you, I was extremely envious because I think you were about the smoothest dude in Cape Town in those days, and all the good-looking honeys were hanging off your arms. So I had a bit of a problem coming to terms with that, and I'm sorry you didn't help your mates out in those days. But John, man, without blowing your trumpet too loudly, the fact is you've become a bit of an iconic figure in the hunting safari business. You've been in it for a very, very long time. But I also know that outside of hunting, you've done a hell of a lot for wildlife, particularly in Zimbabwe, but not only in Zimbabwe. And you've done a lot to try and make Zimbabwe a better place. I know you've taken some risks and you've done some incredible things in just trying to do what you can for your adopted country. But John, over to you. Just tell us why you wanted to write the book.
Hannes, when I started hunting, I mean, it was an absolute dream to me. It was a dream life, and being able to live my dream. So many other people, search for a dream their entire lives and work towards it, and I've ended up living my dream. So when I started, I was enjoying it so much that I decided that I really wanted to write a book. But of course, it was a long time in coming. So, but I'm very happy with the result now that it finally came out. And thanks to you and your amazing help to help me to get it published. It was a great deal for me.
John, it was a pleasure working with you, and I'm pleased we could help and get it out there, because I really think it's a book worth reading for anybody interested in Africa, not only hunting. But John, tell us what brought you to what was then Rhodesia, coming from South Africa. Just a little bit about your early life and how you ended up coming to Rhodesia and staying.
Well, as a youngster, I mean, I grew up on a farm in the Free State and cut my teeth on a 22 rifle and shotguns and various things and hunting little varmints and that. And I loved the outdoors and I loved the thought of hunting. I read every hunting book that I could find out on a farm in the Free State, and it was a dream that to be able to do something like that. When hunting ended in Kenya, because most of the books were written in Kenya and about Kenya, I thought that was the end of it, and I was very depressed about that and was trying to look for other things to do and whatever, and I ended up inadvertently in the restaurant business. And then an old school friend of mine, Timothy Arnott, whom you might know, he invited me to come up to Rhodesia, and on a month's holiday.
Okay.
And so I packed up and headed off to Rhodesia with him, and I totally fell in love with the place, and that's where I met Ray Tor at the Lion and Elephant Motel, and it was during the war years, and they were getting the odd client and stuff, and he told me that there had been a fledgling safari industry in Rhodesia, when the war started, and of course things were down due to the war, but of course this piqued my interest incredibly, and he told me that I did quite a bit of hunting for him in a future trip. And he said to me, you really must get your learner hunter's license. So he set me up for that. And I went to Harare and studied and wrote all the exams and passed. And I got my learner's license. And that was about the time that the ceasefire came. And so I decided to go back to South Africa and wait and see, how things were going to turn out with the incoming Mugabe government. And it was when I went back to Cape Town, that's when I got offered the Hard Rock Cafe. And then the honeys all started to appear, and it was kind of like fun. I did very, very well there, and I intended doing it for 3 years. And at the end of a 3-year period, I was physically done, finished. I was sleeping 4.5 hours a night for 3.5 years. So when I finally walked out of there, it was a huge relief. And I just packed up and I bought a truck, got some bars and stuff designed on it, and I came straight back to Rhodesia and joined in with Ray Tor and did my proficiency test with Ronnie van Heerden at Rupert van der Riet Safaris, and that was me. And I just launched into the hunting bush and just, as I said, just living a total dream. It was amazing. It was absolutely phenomenal.
John, the title, Facing Down Fear. Tell us about your fears and what you dealt with and how you dealt with it.
I'd say that my biggest fear when I started in this business, I knew that I would be the only person standing between danger and the client. But, when you've never experienced a charge from a buffalo or a lion, whatever, you don't actually know how you're going to react. Mm. Are you going to be able to stand there, or is your nerve going to break and you're going to cut and run? And that was my biggest fear to start with until the first time it happened. And it happened many times after that, especially with buffalo, but also with lion and elephant, and of course leopards. And I learned that I did have what it took to stand my ground in the face of danger and be between me and the client. And that's basically the essence of professional hunting. So that was my first fear. And of course, the next fear was ever getting a client or one of my staff injured or hurt or killed on safari. So that has been my prime aim throughout my entire career, is I want to end my career without having lost a client, myself, a member of staff, anything like that. I want a clean record when I get out of there, and that's paramount in my thoughts always.
John, it's a pity the anti-hunting people don't read your book, because it explains in some graphic detail how dangerous this profession actually is. A lot of the critics, I think, are of the view that this involves fat, useless people sitting in vehicles, firing off shots from a distance with high-powered rifles, and don't understand just how dangerous this profession can be, and how demanding it can be.
It's very true, Hannes. But then, if you do the job, in my mind, if you do it properly, which is on foot, not out of a vehicle, that if you do it on foot and face these animals on their own turf, that's the way it has to work. It's not driving around in a vehicle and just culling things as you go along. It is hard and very dangerous work, and very, very nerve-wracking when you have to follow a dangerous animal into Jess, very thick bush, whatever, knowing what is probably going to come out of it, and are you going to survive it, and are you going to be able to keep your client safe, etc. So that's always been my ethical viewpoint on this.
Yeah, I do think some hunters have let the side down a bit. There have been some people who don't have the same ethics as I know you have, and I think most of the hunters that came out of Zimbabwe or Rhodesia do adhere to. But John, tell us the closest you came to cutting and running. When did you feel the most pressure?
That's a hard one, Hannes. I mean, I've had so many of those incidents in my career that it's difficult to single one incident out. I touched briefly on one of those at the beginning of my book. Some people said, "Why didn't you finish the story?" But it was a piece just set there to pique people's interest, and that was going into very, very thick, tall riverine reeds after a wounded buffalo. Just me and my tracker Isaac, who's now been with me for 37 years. And going into this thick bush where I was parting the reeds with my rifle barrel. And I mean, it was absolutely nerve-wracking, and just wishing that I could fly rather than be walking or doing what I was doing, and get above this and look down on it from the top. But and then getting in the thick of it all like that, and then Isaac stopped me, and his ears turned towards one side, and you could hear that buffalo's labored breathing inside there. So you knew he was alive, and you knew he was in there, and you had to get him, and fortunately, the way it ended, I mean, we managed to, well, Isaac spotted him first, as usual. He was down, and, I finished him off, but it didn't come as a charge. But that whole walk in there where your nerves were just absolutely on edge, and you wished you were anywhere but where you were at that time. That is a very frightening experience, and I've had a lot of those. But the high that you get after surviving and getting through that and finishing the game is wow. That is as Wilbur Smith always used to say, you yearn for this as the addict yearns for the needle. It's a strange thing, but you do yearn for that, probably because of the high that you get afterwards. I mean, it's interesting, but I've been through a lot of those situations over the years and still stand here unscathed, thankfully.
John, people always ask the question about what animal do you fear hunting the most? And I personally have huge respect for lions. I know they're all dangerous, and I came unstuck with a buffalo. But what's the closest you came to getting hurt by a lion?
I've been lucky with lions. I think one of the closest was a situation where we were going into the blind and saw the lion, and the client shot it, and it kind of leapt up and disappeared into some really thick bush, and we couldn't see anything there. And the worst part was that there were 4 females, and they started giving us total grief because I guess this was their pride male. And this was my early years. These days now we don't shoot pride males at all. But the light was getting darker and darker, and we got the vehicle in, and these 4 lionesses were charging from 4 different sides at us in the semi-darkness, and we were trying to get out of there. And eventually we did manage to get out of there and came back the next morning and walked in slowly. And that lion that we were looking for had moved, but he suddenly sat up. He sat up growling, and I managed to shoot him and down him. But I mean, that's pretty hair-raising. But that it wasn't, as it were, there wasn't a charge. The aggression came from the females, and the moment we shot that lion, these females started calling from a ways away, getting closer and closer. So they must have heard the shot, and we threw that lion with great ease into the back of the cruiser, which is, is not an easy task. Got it in there, and we drove, a bunch of kilometers away from there so that we could take it out and take photographs. But that was pretty hairy. But I've never actually had a full-blown charge from a lion. There've been close calls, but nothing quite like that. But that is the one animal that I fear probably more than all of them. I've had most of my scrapes with buffalo, but the lion, I've had a lot of incoming leopards at night, because I've always followed them. You shoot them at dusk or just into night, and then you can't leave them out there because of hyenas and lions and whatever. So I've always gone in there with lights to go and get them out of there so that we could bring them home. And I've had a lot of nighttime scrapes with leopards as well, but never a really bad one with a lion.
John, buffalo, where have you found buffalo hunting the most challenging?
The most challenging always, buffalo hunting is one thing. Okay, you've always got the wind to worry about, because that can actually push you through to an unsuccessful safari. And the wind is coming 360 all over the place. You can't get close enough. But always the hair-raising ones are when the client would wound a buffalo, and it would then make for the thickest bush, and you had to go in and get it. And those scenarios were always very hair-raising, and I did many of those.
John, you came very close to being killed by a puff adder. Now, I know it's a long story, but just tell us a bit about that. If I remember correctly, you were hunting with Wilbur Smith at the time, or he was somewhere in the loop.
Yeah, that is correct. Wilbur hunted a lot with me for about 8 or 9 years, with his late wife, Danielle. And on this particular occasion, he was in for a leopard, and I was hunting in the Lusula area. We didn't have really any plains game to speak of there, so we used to shoot buffalo for bait, and bait leopards with buffalo meat. And they had arranged a Hello Magazine article, an interview in Victoria Falls, which was supposed to be, according to them, a one-day deal. And it took up a total of, the interview was 3 days. And then Wilbur and Danielle decided to bring the cameraman and the journalist back to camp. So I flew into Victoria Falls to collect them on the appointed day. And they told me that we were bringing back these two people, a guy and a lady. And so that wasted a whole nother day in camp. And I had to then fly them back to Vic Falls and come back again, and then only start the hunt. So we had about 8 or 9 days out of a 14-day safari to shoot buffalo for bait leopard and get a leopard. So we were in a bit of a rush, and walking along early one morning, tracking buffalo, this puff adder struck at us from about 10 meters away. It was under a bush, and I just saw my trackers go up with their wheels, their legs spinning around like wheels, and I knew it was a snake somewhere. And they pointed this out. It was way out of, not a danger to us. And Danielle, as usual, she always walked around with a camera, and she wanted to take photographs of this thing. And I tried unsuccessfully to take photographs of puff adders on russet leaves. And you honestly, when the photographs are developed, you don't know. You think your camera's gone off by accident because you actually don't see anything. So she wanted to take photographs of it. I knew I was in a rush, and I knew nothing was going to happen. So I grabbed a big log, and I tried to pull this thing out from under the bush to a bare patch of ground where she'd be able to take photographs. And I couldn't get it out of there. So in desperation, I trapped its head with this big ungainly piece of log. And as I went down as my fingers just brushed the back of its neck, it came out from under there, and gave me a full charge. So that was me done for the next 3 months. So yeah, we had to walk back to the truck because that was on the other side of a ravine, and got into the truck to drive. And Danielle said, no, you're not driving. You sit in the passenger seat and let Isaac drive. So we went back to camp like that, and I was still feeling pretty good an hour and a half later. And I said to them, okay, I'll just have a cup of tea and you guys go off and hunt with Isaac and see if you can shoot something for bait, and I'll just wait around camp. And she said, no ways. Said, you get in your plane and you fly. And well, I didn't know which way to go. I mean, I knew that flying time to Harare was the longest. Vic Falls was a bit closer, and Bulawayo, and I never flown to Bulawayo before, was the closest. And I don't know why I chose Bulawayo. Maybe because it was closer to South Africa. I don't know. I really have no idea. But I flew to Bulawayo with Wilbur as my co-pilot. Danielle insisted on that, and I was fine until about 30 minutes before touchdown, and then the pain set in, and I had to get Wilbur to close the throttle and, you know, all those hand deals, and I managed to land the plane and whizzed around to the outside the terminal building, locked the plane up, and jumped into a taxi, which I'd ordered to go to hospital. And that was the start of a long saga, which I finally got back to work about 3 months later.
Yeah, some gruesome photographs, John, which are in the book. Maybe we can put them up on this, but yeah, you very nearly lost your life. You very nearly lost your arm, but you ended up just losing. Let's have a look at your finger, or what's left of it.
Yeah, just that was it. That was the sum total of what I lost. One less nail to cut and clean, and a bit more room in my left pocket.
John, you know, it just one of the we talk a lot amongst ourselves, hunters and stuff, but the trackers are very often forgotten. And I think we all know that anybody who's done any hunting or anything related to wildlife, they are just such a big part of our lives. And I know your trackers have been a big part of your life. Just talk a little bit about the trackers and how valuable and what wonderful men they are.
Yeah, they are truly the unsung heroes of this game. I mean, most of us would be nothing without those guys. And as I said, my number one track has been with me now for about 37 years, almost my entire career. And I've lost number two trackers to HIV, and had to replace them. But those guys are truly amazing. I mean, you know, you have to, it's part of your team, and you have to set yourself up with absolutely the best you can find. You know, being at cooks and waiters and, you know, everybody around camp, they're all an integral part of safari life. And my cook was with me for 25 years. I mean, he worked for me virtually until he died. I mean, I sent him home, and, you know, 2 weeks later he was gone. And, you know, that's loyalty, and amazing loyalty. But I put a lot of effort into him. He loved to cook. And so, yeah, I always had this amazing team around me. And I was very fortunate. One year I decided to take Isaac with me to the SCI convention in Reno, so that he could see, you know, what I did to try and get hunts and et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, yeah.
And that year I won the APHA, it's actually my award, the John Sharp Award for Dangerous Game. And I won that. And I called Isaac up on stage. He was sitting in the audience, and I said, you know, this is you can't do it without people like this. And he received a standing ovation when he came up on stage. And to me, it was a great honor to be able to honor him in this kind of way. I wish I'd been able to do it for the other guys, but it cost a lot of money to take them over there, and hotel rooms and food and keep and air tickets, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a big honor for me. But yeah, they are absolutely, that guy is my right hand. And as I've grown deaf in later life, he's my ears, he's my eyes. He's like everything. And he's a proud Matabele, and he won't budge. You know, he'll point out the animal and he'll step aside or get just behind me so that I can face that incoming. And we've had an amazing relationship over 37 years.
Wonderful guys, wonderful guys. One of these days, somebody needs to write a book about the trackers. They deserve it. They really do. But John, you're talking about convention.
You know, because even when I went to Tanzania, when I was offered a job up there, I insisted on bringing Isaac with me because I didn't want to get involved with some new guy. I mean, Isaac and I knew, just by looking at each other or by a person's expression or stance or something, you knew what was going on. And that's the way we worked. And I didn't want to risk having somebody new. So I took him even to Tanzania with me for the 3.5 years that I hunted there.
John, the ongoing hunting conservation story and anti-hunters and stuff, people who I actually don't think get enough publicity. You know a lot about, I'm out of touch with it, but the hunting associations that put so much into these areas and keep a lot of these conservation operations running. And one that has really done an enormous amount of good work in Africa is the Dallas Safari Club, which I know you closely associated with, but just talk a little bit about some of the projects that they've been involved in that you know of.
Oh, Dallas Safari Club, yeah, it's really a gem of an organization. I mean, I don't want to talk badly about Safari Club International because they do a lot, they lobby a lot in the courts and in Washington, D.C., et cetera, but Dallas is down on the people's level, down on our level. You know, if we suggest to them, as we've done in the past, that, you know, they should accept only people as exhibitors who are members of their home associations. They hear that, they act on it, and they make it happen. And, you know, like they've started an insurance fund for the families of PHs who get disabled or killed. I mean, they've done so much for the industry. They really are a force to be reckoned with. They're amazing people. They're down-to-earth people. Mm-hmm. And I thoroughly enjoy my time at the shows there. When you see the president, you might well see him sweeping the floor somewhere or doing whatever. It's everybody's down to earth level with everybody around them. They really are an amazing organization, and they've done so much and given so much. I mean, you know, too, with Mark Haldane and people like that, how they've supported, and they're not the only ones, but they always throw their support behind people when they can. And they're an amazing organization.
Yeah, John, you talk about Mark Haldane and the Mozambique Maramau story. That's actually something I really need to try and find out more about, because that must be one of the great conservation success stories of modern times, what they've done there. And that really is a lot to do with Dallas Safari Club, is it not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Dallas Safari Club and the Cabela's Fund have all helped out with helicopters and motorcycles and translocation of lions and, you know, anti-poaching work and that. I mean, that really is an amazing success story. Yeah,
John, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've taken that buffalo population was on its last legs at one stage, and I think there are over 40,000 buffalo in the Delta.
Amazing success story. And of course, they've done what everybody needs to do, and that is to get the communities around them involved. You know, they've started all these beekeeping projects and fishing projects and all that kind of stuff, helping the communities around them, and the communities in return help them. And it's an amazing success story. And as I said, people are slowly moving in that direction, but not quickly enough for my liking, to get the surrounding communities involved. in doing everything, you know, in the meat, in the food, and helping them as much as you can, schools and clinics. The BBC does a lot of that, because we're surrounded there by different communities, and they've done a lot for those people over the years with, you know, putting in boreholes and schools and clinics and, you know, just everything. And of course, at one time we were supplying them with 36 tons of meat a month on a rotational basis, you know, from the hunting proceeds of in the conservancy.
There in Marymount?
No, this is the BBC in Zim.
Oh, okay.
And I digress there. I'm just saying that the community, people need to, all over Africa, they need to become more involved with the communities around them and include them in the, process.
This meat is coming from where? From the Lowveld, from Limco?
Yeah, from the Bubye Valley Conservancy. You know, when it was so much of the hunting meat was donated to the surrounding communities, and apparently now the new owner there has decided that all the meat, no more meat is to be sold anywhere or done, you know, only for the camps, and the rest of it is all going to the surrounding communities. So, and it's a good thing. It must happen everywhere.
John, you spent a bit of time in the Congo, or what was then Zaire. What happened up there? How long did that last?
No, I wasn't there for very long. I mean, we only did a trip up there for a couple of 3 weeks, and just barely got out of there intact. I'd met Mobutu Sese Seko's son, Manda Mobutu, in Joburg, and he had a South African guy running an operation in the Congo, safari operation. But he said he just spent all his time fishing and didn't do anything. And he asked me if I would be interested in taking on something like that. And then a friend of mine wanted to go up there. He was actually born in the Congo. I don't know if you ever met Cyril Cummins from Marari, but he was a pilot as well. And so 4 of us ended up flying to Lubumbashi, and then on to Kananga, where we left the plane in an old disused hangar, and then caught a ride on a very overloaded truck. And it was only once we got there that I discovered these guys were more after trying to see if they could secure some diamonds in Mbujimai. And so that's where we kind of headed on this truck, and yeah, that led to a bit of heavy stuff with the army, and these guys, you know, wanted to take our passports away and all sorts of stuff. And the Lebanese diamond dealer actually came and saved our bacon and organized a truck to get us out of there. So it was quite hairy. But, you know, I didn't, you know, flying over a lot of that area, I mean, it's very, very lush, very green. And there's rivers like the Zambezi, it looked like everywhere. So, and most of the bridges were done. One bridge that we crossed in that big truck, we had to get off the truck and crawl along the metalwork of the bridge. There was no cladding on the ground, on the floor, so to speak. Everybody had to crawl sideways and crab along the edges of the bridge to get to the other side. And then this big truck, they pulled out these planks from underneath it, and they put 2 planks on the metalwork, and the driver would drive forward with the front wheels till he got to the end of the plank. Then they put another plank in front and another one behind for the back wheels, and they went across the bridge like that. That was the only way you could cross that bridge. So the logistics of the place was like, sure, it was everything was just absolutely broken. And that was the little that I saw of the bushes that were before we ended up in this diamond town. So nothing was really achieved from my side except quite a hair-raising experience.
John, talk about some of the great personalities, characters that have crossed your path in your hunting days. One chap that springs to mind is our late mutual friend Dave Masson. But you write about some of these guys, and just tell us a little bit about your recollections.
You mean, yeah, Dave. Dave, total another character. I mean, you probably know him better than I did, but he always called me Kleinbot. You know, he was a big guy. I'm not a small guy, but I used to call him Grootbot, meaning big brother, and he'd call me Kleinbot, meaning little brother. But yeah, he was a total character. And I did write that story in my book about this one instance with him when we had Mike Robotham organized an arm wrestling competition, and between me and some other guy, you know, who used to be or was some erstwhile champion, and Dave immediately stepped in there because Robotham was shouting the odds and whatever, and he put $100 on me, and Robotham was betting against me and all the rest of it. And I mean, it was amazing. The vibe in that place was, I was pumped up with adrenaline and whatever, and sitting at this table with this guy, a round table. We were sitting in chairs on each end. I mean, it wasn't like one of these official arm wrestling things where you've got things to hold on to at the sides and whatever like that. And I mean, I was so pumped that when they told us to go, the guy was holding our hands locked on the middle of the table, and when he pulled his hand away, I mean, I yanked so hard that I pulled the whole table over with this arm wrestler guy on the other end of it, and he landed behind my left shoulder, and I was declared the winner. So too much bleating from Robotham and all the rest of them, but old Masson would have none of it. You know, he was just one of those special people. And I don't know how many times I went to Harare airport to collect somebody, and I'd see somebody standing there with a rifle on the stairs outside, and I'd go up there and I'd say to the guy, "Can I help you? Can I try and get hold of somebody for it? Can I give you a lift somewhere?" And the guy said, "Oh no, that's fine." He said, "I'm just waiting for Dave Masson. He'll be along." And you know, the guy probably got dragged off to watch a cricket match, and then spent a few days at the Guai River Hotel. Yeah, that was Dave. Everybody loved him. He was just such an amazing character.
He must have been the most disorganized, irresponsible hunter in the history of hunting, and yet he had them queuing up to book safaris with him. It was quite incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, he used to just sit at the bar. You know, he used to call it the office. He'd sit outside the convention at the bar, and the clients would come to him. You know, so truly amazing. And I very sadly saw him just before he died in a nursing home in Cape Town. I went to visit him there, and yes. I mean, he was a mere shadow of his former self. It was so very, very sad to see. Yeah, sure. That was the end of old Dave Masson. Shame.
Yeah, and Mike Robotham, he left us just the other day. He got to a ripe old age. Mike was also a law unto himself in the hunting business. But yeah, I think we've all got lots of very happy memories about these guys.
Yeah, I can tell you some stories about Mike that I wouldn't care to repeat in public.
And Shane, John, just a little from me, a personal tribute to Dion Stephan, who died just 2 days ago.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, he had a heart attack night before last, I think. Another one of those fabulous characters. I mean, I want to do a story about Dion because, jeepers, he was one of a kind. I'm sure you've got some stories about Dion as well.
Man, you know, to tell you the truth, Hannes, I only met him twice briefly in the falls.
Okay.
At Russell Caldecott's lodge, the ultimate lodge. But I never got to spend much time with him at all. So I don't actually have any stories. I mean, anything I heard was just hearsay from other people, and I don't really recall them, but he certainly was a character.
And an amazing hunter too, actually. I mean, his looks belied his competence. He was incredibly capable. Actually, everything he did, he was very good at, Dion. But yeah, he's another guy that needs something written about, and it's something I want to do in the not too distant future.
Yeah, it would have been interesting if he'd written a book.
Anyway, John, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to touch on, but it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
It's been stunning, Hannes. As I said before, I've thoroughly enjoyed writing this book. It came a little bit too late. I always said to myself that when I did get down to writing this book, that I would just look in my photograph albums, and the stories would jump out at me. And when I finally started going through my photograph albums, I didn't know half the people that were in there. I mean, I couldn't recall names or whatever. I mean, I knew what we'd hunted because they were photographs. I didn't know who these people were or anything like that. And I thought to myself, whoa, you better get down and write what you can remember now before you just lose it all. So that's how the book came about.
Well done, John. It's a valuable record of events, and I think you've done hunting and conservation a big favor by doing it, because anybody who really wants to understand the dynamics will learn from that book. I really believe that.
Well, thanks, Hannes, and I really appreciate your help in getting it published. And as I said, it was a labor of love, and I'm very happy with the result. And yeah, it's something to leave behind, a legacy.
Well, John, let's see how it goes on Amazon. But Amazon is becoming a very powerful force in this whole publishing industry. So the book, as I said earlier, is now available, and we'll just see how it goes.
Very interesting. Thanks for getting that all organized. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure it will. Well, I hope it will do very well there.
John, thanks for your time, and happy hunting, and stay safe.
Thanks, my friend. Appreciate it. It was lovely talking to you.